Islamophobia is a new word for an old fear. Islam on its birth did not stand immune to cynicism. Rather, some quarters represented it a problem to the world. Christian Byzantine, Greek monks, and the church establishment, alarmed by the swift spread of Islam from Arabia to the Middle East in a short span of time after its birth, launched an intractable campaign of slander and indignation against Islam and Muslims, depicting it as a mere apostasy and a sort of barbaric paganism. The foundation of this antagonism against Islam was laid down by John of Damascus, a Christian scholar who was a great friend of the Umayyad Khalifa Yazid, by declaring Islam to be a pagan cult and was derogative towards the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For long, his writings and accusations became the classical source of all writings against Islam. Not only by the literary giants, even the church elders regarded Islam as an evil and absolutely alien to God, according to the Karen Armstrong. According to Alexander Gainem, a freelance journalist, the rejection of Islam and Muslims' culture reached its peak in the Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, a pinnacle of Western literature in the 13th century. Dante was an Italian poet who is considered to be a supreme poet, and his work is considered as the masterpiece of world literature. Hence, his sayings are taken no less than prophetic. Some religious stalwarts in 14th century also saw Islam as theological heresy at the level of morals and practice. During this period, the Council of Vienna met between 1311 and 1312 in vain, whereby elders of the council reached a consensus that Muslims could not be converted and persuaded. Thus, an academic onslaught be initiated against them. Early 15th century mounted further insolence to Islam and Muslims when Giovanna da Madonna's controversial painting, The Last Judgment, displayed in Italy. It attacked the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam of Muslims, whereby deepening the already widened gulf between Islam and others. Muslims faced extreme racial sentiments in Spain during the 15th century. Some scholars called Spain as home of racism. Interestingly, they connected Columbus' voyage to America continent with racial stigma, as large portion of the slaves that he brought with him were Muslims. Continuing to track the historical lines of differences between Islam and others, there comes the name of Humphrey Periadex, doctor of divinity, who saw Muslims as part of God's inscrutable purposes, to be a punishment for the sins of other religions. He took the entrenchment of the Muslims' continental rule as a scourge to Christians and expected it to continue till they are clean. Some other contemporaries like Peter Helen and Ross were grossly out of logic to condemn a religion that has a huge number of followers. Following the footprints, Broughton's Dictionary of All Religions categorized the religions of world into two classes: true religions that included Christianity and Judaism, and false religions including all others. The attitudes toward Islam remained unchanged during 19th and 20th century. JLA published Vindicia Christian, whereby denigrating Islam, Hinduism, and other religions as being perpetual falsehood, pernicious and extravagant. So much so, the Balkan War of 1912 and 13 was proclaimed to be a crusade against Islam, largely by the British press. Other more recent web bloggers and literary artifacts like the House of Apostasy, which keep the door open for religious blasphemy and describe Muslims as intellectually weak, enjoy killing. Similarly, Miller says Islam is Satan's most brilliant and effective invention for leading men astray. Leffin also condemns Islamic concept of holy war and stresses to break the treaties with infidels. Of course, Salman Rushdie and Taslima Nasreen are just recent addition to continuing indignation to Islam and Muslims. Nevertheless, media contributed substantially in making their work world fame. Contemporary literature on hostility towards Muslim and Islam in fact supplements what used to be in the past. Edward Said, the author of one of the most celebrated book, Orientalism, confirms the subtle and persistent Eurocentric prejudice against Arabo-Islamic people and their culture. Maintaining his focus on European prejudice towards others, he coined another facet of Islamophobia, wherein Muslims and Islamic culture were seen as static both in time and place and incapable of defining themselves, and compared to West as a dynamic and innovative and explaining culture. Holiday, even earlier than Samuel Huntington, whose famous work Clash of Civilization appeared parallel to the Edward Said's thesis, also presented Islam as a threatening other for the West. Huntington's thesis was that new Cold War would take place not on the basis of economics or politics, but culture. Succinctly, it is argued that Islam has been viewed as a contra-religio-political force which is capable of posing grave threats to the West. It has been viewed as the new enemy of the world to find a support for heavy hoarding of ammunitions and West designs of expansionism. Some other titles given to Islam are cultural enemy, opposing cultural ecologies, a challenge, and the threat to the Western world, threat to the Western security, present terror of the world, and the others, and the fifth column. Strangely enough, it is not Islam and any other religion that they are contrasted, or the East or the West, but Islam, a religion, and the West, a geographical area. Contemporary posture of the problem reveals that Islam posed itself as a powerful socio-political religious force of medieval age, when followers of other religions were in deep slumber, passing through the dark age. Hostility towards Islam and Muslim was the net outcome of the passive-active relationship between the West and Islam, which finally resulted in the Crusades, an effort to create a balance of power between the dominant socio-political religious forces of the times. Strangely enough, centuries-long prevalence of the hostility turned into racial, cultural, anti-Islam and anti-Muslim sentiments during the contemporary times. Until recent changes in the world politics, communism used to pose great threat to the world and the rest. Islam replaced the communism as a threatening other. Could it be taken that one threatening ideology is being replaced by another, having a historical background of being a problem for the world peace and normalcy? Quite interestingly, there are plenty of events of terrorism, subjugation, subversion, and animosity to prove Islam and Muslims as threatening others on the basis of religion in the contemporary world. Other dimension of differences between Islam and others rest on the race. Race was a concept in historic Arabic literature which referred to a lineage of animals, particularly applied to horses, while ethnicity referred to the people with common histories, language, rituals, food, songs, etc. Nevertheless, the Spanish literature made the race synonymous to blood and religion. How and where did Islam and its followers become subject of racial prejudice? Probably it was Islam's expansion across the continents in a short span of time, which constituted theological, political, and cultural challenges to the West. Mass conversion of Islam from other religions added insult to the injury, as a result of which the West found it easier to demonize Islam and Muslims than to understand it. This demonization labeled Islam and Muslims with different racial stereotypes which were meant to create hatred against the religion and its followers. Centuries-long crusades based on hostility between the warring factions furthered the hatred by giving it an institutionalized outlook, racial prejudice, us and them. Contemporary world carried these racial prejudice against Islam and Muslims, which has historical reasons and situations further aggravated due to the unrest and rise of jihadi movements in and across the Muslim world. Hence, new terminologies developed to name the difference that was there in the history and seems to continue for long. Thy name is Islamophobia.